Now let's meet our guest for the hour. Fox News contributor and president of Independent Women's Voice, Tammy Bruce. Turning Point USA spokesperson, Rob Smith, debuting on the show tonight. We're excited to have him. And editor-at-large at Red State, Kira Davis, who actually has a brilliant T-shirt that very sadly didn't work for technical reasons on TV, but I've made you promise you're going to put that T-shirt back on.
I'll put it on my Twitter feed.
And just tell them your Twitter so that you can all...
At Real Kira Davis, and look for the shirt that says Liberate California. It's pretty cool. It's
we love it.
California needs to be liberated.
Yes,
very much so.
sir.
All right, let's... look, as I said, I don't want to talk about guns all night. There's so many other issues. It's so complicated. There's so many facets to this. But, you know, it is a debate. It is going on. The president's in the lead. Tammy, he seems to be focusing on these two aspects, the background checks and the red flag laws. What's your...
Well, yeah, there's one argument about the red flag laws, that they would be unconstitutional because of the issue of due process. The president has noted that that could be handled, that this isn't about no court or somebody just comes to get your gun because there's a complaint that's made because a family member's worried about you. There has to be due process if that is met. I think that this is something most Americans would agree on, that that would be an important thing, that people closest to these individuals who would notice problems first, parents and siblings and maybe coworkers who become concerned. I believe the mother of the El Paso shooter, in fact, had issued some concern about her son having gotten a gun. So if we've got a process that we can deal with that, that's great. Clearly, this is multi-layered. There are many things involving this. Background checks are great, but one thing that has been missing is the behavior of young people, minors in school, like the Dayton shooter, a kill list, a rape list, a shutdown of the school. That kind of behavior is not available for databases. So, and of course, they're minors. One argument is it's also about mental health records being private. But if we're going to be serious, that is exactly the kind of behavior that must be included in background check frameworks. So that's, you can have all the background checks you want. It wouldn't have stopped Dayton from getting that firearm. So we need to look at where these things fall through the cracks with the understanding that the Second Amendment matters, but Americans have come together agreeing on all of our rights when those elements should be restricted for the safety of society without throwing out the Second Amendment or our rights that the Constitution allows.
Rob, sounds like you agree with much of that.
You know, I do agree a lot with that. I see a lot of people that are very, very pro 2A, and they have issues with the red flag laws. And some of the issues that they have with it is, you know, are we putting these laws, you know, are we putting this stuff in the hands of the government to say who is a danger, who is a threat, who is not? And when we look at the way that conservatives and people that are right-leaning are sort of suppressed via social media, they say that can be a tool that can be used incorrectly. You know, it can be used the wrong way.
I saw Ben Shapiro had a very good comment on that, which is that for this to work, you need that kind of sense of social trust.
You do.
Yeah, we don't.
And I don't think people have
That's why I'm not in favor of it.
One thing, can I just say on that, Kira? There's a version. There are lots of different versions of red flag. You know, different states got different versions. I mentioned this as well last week. There's one. I think Doug Ducey, governor of Arizona, Republican, has been pushing forward in Arizona. Hasn't got it through yet, but has been pushing it. That, as I understand it, has the support of the NRA. So it sounds like with that one, some of the due process stuff is satisfactorily covered.
I don't think this is something that should be addressed at the federal level. This is a state issue. The Second Amendment is a federal statute, but we do have background checks. Each state has different background checks. I mean, here in California, it's nearly impossible to get a weapon. You have to wait a very long time. So we have these things already. I believe that this is a bottom-up problem, not a top-down problem. And for all the reasons that Rob just mentioned, and you quoted Ben Shapiro, I feel very nervous about giving the government this type of power. I'm not in favor of it. And furthermore, I think Trump has to tread very lightly here because his base, especially his rabid base, is loyal, but the Second Amendment is where most people stop. I think if he messes with this too much, it's going to come back to bite him in 2020.
I think he's very, you know, he's been very careful on that. Like, and I thought it was interesting his comment there.
I can see him threading the needle.
Yes, but I think that is, you know, there's an awful lot of people who just are sitting there saying, "Come on, you know, we're America. You know, we must be able to do more than nothing on this."
You know,
problem.
even my comments in support of a law like this, there is the haters. It's like, well, you just hate the Second Amendment. As a matter of fact, I don't. I mean, we as a society have agreed to look. We have it's a rule that you don't want to have like a bail or some kind of framework that's too onerous when someone commits a crime, and yet sometimes we have no bail. And sometimes we have a bail that's $3 million because killing people, you don't want that person to get out. And we all agree as a society, or with freedom of expression, we've all agreed that child pornography is unacceptable and is not like everything else. So this is the point of coming together as a community. And Americans have been fabulous in understanding about being able to understand our rights while being able to make sure that we don't live in hell. That there's a recognition that we can do certain things, including the mentally ill not being able to have a firearm, domestic violence perpetrators not being able to have a firearm. And in this particular case, people close to individuals, you have to see how these things are drawn up, where there is a red flag, where there's people think this is the guy that's going to go shoot up his workplace, with due process, that where there's an argument and a defense that can be made. I think Americans understand, and when we look at the recent shootings and who knew, and where there was no way to do
I'm so sorry. Wait. I'm so sorry.
I'm
really
also
sorry.
we should give the
we have to
government
get. Wait.
that type of
Just one
power.
thing I will point out is that the proposal actually that the administration got behind on red flags last year even, and Lindsey Graham has been on that, was all about not doing it at the federal level. It was about incentivizing and helping it to happen at the state level. So
Correct.
to at least that extent,
could answer some of your
concern was-
concern.
Yes, I could answer.
Exactly. All right. I'm so sorry. We've got to go.
Yeah.
It's always like this. Your first time, but I'm telling you, we always run out of time. I'm really sorry. All right. As I